Hey folks, welcome to the Amm Fam. Okay, this is gonna be a quick video about video settings, just the basics. There's probably other places you could find this information on YouTube, and that's cool, but there's just something special about it being from me, right? Let me just take off my dog's collar real quick. Don't need this sound in the background the whole time. Okay, before we get started, this video is not sponsored by Squatty Potty. That would be a bit strange. Not sponsored by Squatty Potty. But fun fact, my wife did used to work there as their creative director for about 2 years. So that's cool. All right, so we're gonna run through this quick because I have not eaten breakfast yet and I'm hungry. If you're taking photos, there are 3 main things you need to know about. Let's see if I can do this. ISO, or ISO, however you wanna say it. Shutter speed, aperture. I don't know if my hand's in the right place or not. I'm shooting on the A6300, so I don't have a front-facing screen, so I'm just pointing to places that I think. ISO is basically how sensitive your sensor is to light. If you bump your ISO up really high, it's like putting your camera on steroids, light steroids, so it can see in the dark. The trade-off with ISO is that the higher you go, the more noisy the image becomes. Some cameras do this better than others. Sony, like my camera. My camera can operate at a very high ISO. Like if I wanted to take some night shots with this camera, I can jump all the way up to 6400 ISO and be fine. So that's one advantage of Sony. If you're gonna be shooting lots of night shots, night video, night photography, Sony's pretty good. I've been very happy with mine. Shutter speed. Shutter speed is very important because it captures motion or no motion. So the faster your shutter speed, the more clean and crisp your shot is going to be. So for example, if I'm shooting a sport, I want my shutter speed to be fast because I want to stop the motion. The longer I open my shutter, there's gonna be more light. But the longer you leave your shutter open, there's gonna be blur or movement. So sometimes I want that. Like I could move my shutter speed up to like 45 minutes. And then there's gonna be those nice, sexy star trails in the sky. And that's cool. Think about it this way, my eyeball. So with a fast shutter speed, your eye would just, so my eyelids are my shutters, it would just open real quick. And then that captures the one frame that the camera's gonna see, or my eye. So if I was moving or doing sports, and then I just capture it, and it stops the motion, it freezes it. But if I have a long shutter speed, it opens up for a while and there's gonna be blur. So I'd be like, so that helps me remember shutter speed with my eyes. Here's an image that I did with a really quick shutter speed when there was some movement. And here is a shutter speed where it was very slow and you can see a lot of movement. Examples are good. Okay, and the third thing you need to know for photos is aperture. Aperture is important because it's like the opening of the hole. So like the hole. It's a little bit confusing at first because aperture, the lower the number, the bigger the opening, and vice versa. When it's really dark, your pupil dilates real big, so it lets in more light. And then when it's really bright out, it constricts real tight so that it doesn't pick up so much light. So this, I'm currently shooting at f1.4, so it's letting a lot more light in. The image is gonna be a lot brighter. Also, a side effect of low aperture is depth of field. So you can see that my face is in focus and the background is blurred. If I was shooting at f11, for example, or aperture 11, that means the hole is smaller. That would make this couch in focus and my face. That's aperture. For video, the same basic principles apply, but there are more things to consider. Frame rates. Frame rates are huge. This camera specifically, it shoots at 24 frames a second, which is like a basic Hollywood movie. All movies are shot at 24 frames a second. It also shoots at 60 frames a second and at 120 frames a second. I'm currently shooting at 24 frames a second because I'm just standing around, sitting here talking about camera settings and video. So I don't need to shoot at a higher frame rate. If you want slow motion, you want to shoot at a higher frame rate, like 120 frames a second. Whenever I go out and I'm shooting my B-roll, ooh, here's a nice river, here's a nice tree, here's a nice branch, here's some cool snow. Ooh, you get the snow falling, and I want the snow to be in slow motion. I shoot at 120 frames a second, and then in post, when I'm editing, I could slow it down to like 25% of the timeline speed, and it will go nice and slow and smooth. If I was to slow 24 frames a second down, to like 25% of the timeline speed, it would be really choppy and jumpy like this. But here's the drawback. If I want to shoot at 120 frames a second, I can't shoot 4K, at least with this camera. You can with some cameras, but they cost like $50,000. So if I want to shoot 4K, I have to shoot in 24 frames a second or 30 frames a second, I think this camera can do, but I never shoot 30. So if I want to shoot high frame rates like 60 frames a second or 120 frames a second, I can only shoot in 1080p and not 4K. Alright, that's my quick introduction for the 3 things you need for photo. Let's review real quick. Let's do a quick review. ISO. Remember what ISO is? That's how sensitive your camera's sensor is to light. Fast shutter speed will stop motion. A slow shutter speed will give you motion. And the third thing is aperture, or F number. That's another term for aperture. The lower the F number, the bigger the hole, and the more light is let into the sensor. The higher the F number, the smaller the hole, and less light is able to come into the sensor. But you get a much deeper depth of field, like I said. So I would be in focus, the couch would be in focus, and fun fact, you also get really nice sun stars because the light diffracts. So if you're shooting into the sun, shoot at a high F number because you'll get that nice sun star. If you shot this into the sun at a really low F number, it'd just be like a big bright blob. And then our video summary, high frame rates give you good slow motion, but you can't shoot 4K. I hope that helps. Feel free to ask me questions in the comments or just text me. I'm going to Monument Valley in a couple weeks and I'll show you more there because I'll have more people there that have cameras. We can talk about it. I can show you examples. It'll be so fun. It'll be so great. So I'm gonna go eat some breakfast now. Thanks for watching. I'm starving. This has been a really fun, quick, easy, basic video tutorial from Amm Fam. There's lots of blur.